Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. So, the veto by Russia and China to block U.S. European aggression and economic warfare against Syria, most welcome. The Syrian destabilization, I think, continues to wind down. The last desperate attempt is to suborn, bribe, extort some generals, and try to start a civil war that way. But as far as the death squads and death commandos of the Muslim Brotherhood, they seem to have been largely quelled, although that will go on for a while. On the Pakistani front, very serious questions here. New York Times has an article that there have been shooting incidents between U.S. and Afghan units. Let's just make it U.S. military units on the Afghan side and Pakistani military units on the other side. That the shooting has already begun. We've been concerned about this border now for a very long time. We know the U.S. design is to conduct a cross-border raid to try to destroy or otherwise knock out the Pakistani nuclear deterrent, opening the way to a war on the subcontinent right now, which is prevented by nuclear deterrence. It also allows the U.S. to attack Pakistan really anywhere they want to. This has to be stopped, and this is, of course, Obama. Commentators are now noticing Obama wages all kinds of wars. The difference between him and Bush is he never talks about them. It's a stealth war. It's cowardly. It's based on deceit, exactly as you were warned in Obama, the postmodern coup. Now let's look at Libya. Here, the imperialist war is beginning to go not so well. It seems to me that there's now the emergence of a much wider guerrilla warfare resistance against the al-Qaeda terrorists of the Belhaj school in the Benghazi Rebel Council, who have now moved themselves to Tripoli at least much of the time. Jibril, the darling of the international community, Hillary Clinton's boyfriend, says he's quitting. He will quit as soon as the last city is quelled. Whoa, that may take a long time. The impotence of the Libyan rebels has attracted the attention of the world. Their failure now, 6 weeks and more after the big NATO attack on Tripoli, they still can't take Sirte. They still can't take Bani Walid. They still are really not in a good position in southern Libya in many, many cities. The Gaddafi command structure still works. Gaddafi, his sons, Musa Ibrahim, and others. And Gaddafi continues to issue messages of defiance through the Syrian RAI broadcaster. As I had predicted, and some kindly correspondents have noted this, the rebels apparently are fighting each other. That is, the civil war within the civil war has broken out among, it's not clear whether it's tribes, political groups, criminal syndicates, terrorist factions, whatever they are, that the rebels are fighting among themselves. And as Jibril declines, will Belhaj make a bid for power? This is Belhaj Hasidi Hassadi, the guy that I warned you about in March, and the Il Sole 24 Ore, the London Daily Telegraph, and the Wall Street Journal all wrote him up. An al-Qaeda terrorist, now, of course, transformed into a victim because he was tortured by the CIA. So the Libyan situation continues to defy the efforts of the imperialists, and there's now some idea that the U.S. may be reaching the end of the line. That the air attacks may not be maintained, although they may also be. We've just had the 10th anniversary of the Afghan War, as Maliki was telling us earlier. This is Barki's war. He expanded it in December 2009. He declared the surge. We now have 1,700 U.S. dead, and the Afghan dead in the hundreds of thousands. They claim they want to be out by 2014, but don't hold your breath. So this dismal event has now occurred. We got the Nobel Peace Prize. It's interesting. I was expecting the Nobel Peace Prize to be given to the Arab Spring. They didn't dare do this because there's too much al-Qaeda, too much death and bombing going on now. So it's 2 women from Liberia and 1 from Yemen. So the bloom is off the rose of the Arab Spring. The full demagogic treatment that they would have wanted no longer no longer can work. So again, let's just wrap up. The program points you want to put out. Student loan amnesty, number one. Number two, stop fraud closures. Stop all foreclosures for 5 years or the duration of the Depression. Third, defend and expand the social safety net. You can see it written up on Tarpley.net. Fourth, Wall Street sales tax, 1%, including all derivatives. Fifth, nationalize the Fed. Sixth, 30 million productive jobs at union wages, Davis-Bacon union wages for infrastructure, using the trillion-dollar tranches of national credit from the Fed. And I'm afraid if you don't want that, then you're not in tune with the needs of the American people for economic recovery. A couple of short notes. We know that in order to get Obama out, you got to get Holder out. There are more attacks on Holder in the context of the Fast and Furious, right? The Attorney General Holder is now implicated in nefarious activities compared with covering up the gun-running, gun-walking stuff. Now, this week, check the Tarpley Twitter feed. Webster G. Tarpley Twitter feed. There will be news, I'm predicting, on the effort to launch, at least to begin organizing now in extremis, a primary challenge to Obama, because this, underneath everything else, there is this. In some ways, a lot of these other activities are designed, by some at least, to try to divert attention from the problem that you cannot win if you've got that albatross called Obama around your neck. He is the new Carter. He is a guaranteed loser. The Democratic Party will go down in flames with Obama, as they did with Carter in 1980. If in those days, it meant that the Democratic Party was wrecked for a generation. Indeed, the Democratic Party has never recovered from the disaster, the catastrophe of Carter. Obama is now worse than Carter. A couple of things that are going on, maybe one last point. Austerity is genocide. All right, Krugman, you're right. You finally figured it out. Austerity really is genocide. There's now a federal panel that says men don't need to get a prostate-specific antigen. PSA, not needed, they say. Let me quote Skip Lockwood of Zero, a patient advocacy group. The decision of no confidence on the PSA test by the U.S. government condemns tens of thousands of men to die this year and every year going forward if families are to believe the out-of-date evidence presented to the U.S. panel on preventive medicine, I believe it's called, written up in all the papers today, the 7th of October. I've argued that austerity means genocide. If you say I'm going to cut the federal budget by 50%, you're proposing genocide against the American people. That's Nuremberg stuff. The USPSTF, this is the board that did this. There's only a recommendation. So he says a decision on how to test should be left to a man and his doctor, and it's interesting that the board that made this genocidal decision has no urologists and no medical oncologists. They're just bean counters. They're just Malthusian accountants. Well, this now goes to the IMAC, right? Independent Medical Advisory Council. They're the ones who have life and death. MedPAC, the medical, another name for the same thing, basically. So this stuff has got to be fought. And if you're out there saying, long live austerity, cut the budget and balance the budget and balance the federal expenditures and income, you're talking genocide. Don't do it. Genocide is bad. So, finally, I've got a couple of letters since we have the time, apparently. Maybe not. One letter to me says he wants to defend the consensus building, saying that the millennials have a passive way of learning. No, I'm afraid this will have to change, and the more active individuals in that generation should get active. Remember, nobody is fated to do any of these things. Free will, as Erasmus argued against Luther, obtains. So, I'll have more on this consensus method in the General Assembly next week. So keep up on Tarpley.net and Webster G. Tarpley Twitter feed.